Good day, and welcome to AI Podcast at DigitView. Whether you're a business leader, technologist, or simply curious about what's next, we explore how artificial intelligence is transforming the way we work, create, and make decisions.
Out in the wild, survival runs on a strict binary. If an organism lacks the physical ability or the pattern recognition to match its environment, the feedback is immediate. A single physical miscalculation results in starvation or injury. There is no appeal process. Human systems operate differently. In corporate boardrooms and political hierarchies, individuals make catastrophic, long-term decisions and still receive bonuses or promotions. We rely on social masking, the use of static symbols like university degrees, job titles, or professional attire to project an aura of competence that often exists independently of actual capability. Nature has no mechanism for credential inflation. A wolf cannot use social status to secure a successful hunt. The required skills must physically match the demand of the moment, or the organism fails. To build resilient human systems, we must translate this biological honesty into a programmable mathematical equation. This equation defines Qualification AI, or QAI. It functions as a real-time calculator that multiplies an individual's core dimensions, such as skills and ethics, by contextual weights that update dynamically as time passes. QAI serves to close the gap between the status a person claims to hold and the measurable capability they actually possess. What counts as qualified depends on the environmental demands of the era. The baseline is always in motion. For an early hunter-gatherer, qualification required physical pattern recognition. Tracking an animal or reading the weather meant the group ate. Guessing meant starvation. In the agricultural era, the baseline shifted toward a systemic understanding of soil management and seasonal cycles. Planting a week too late guaranteed famine. The industrial era introduced a demand for mechanical precision. Survival in a factory setting required rigid adherence to complex, repetitive systems, where carelessness caused breakdowns. In the digital era, manual precision is increasingly automated. The modern baseline requires filtering massive information streams, avoiding manipulation, and working ethically alongside artificial intelligence. While the specific skills mutate across centuries, the underlying law remains. A system is only qualified when its capacity matches the demands of reality. QAI relies on a structural model. This radar chart plots 5 core variables: ability, alignment, consistency, adaptability, and impact. Ability tracks raw skills, while alignment measures ethical intention. High ability with low alignment creates a dangerous actor, executing goals that cause systemic harm. Consider medical judgment. A surgeon with high ability might treat symptoms mechanically, but a truly qualified doctor uses an integrated approach, weighing the patient's lifestyle and long-term risks against raw clinical facts. Consistency measures the reliability of success over time. For high-precision roles like factory work, low error variance is the primary indicator of fitness. Conversely, an inventor requires adaptability, the capacity to learn from failure and pivot through uncertainty. Here, repetitive precision is less valuable than cognitive flexibility. Finally, impact tracks the actual consequences of an individual's actions, including long-term ripple effects. High impact often goes unnoticed. A janitor maintaining hospital hygiene systems directly drives down disease transmission rates. QAI registers this outcome as a critical value. Competency is a shifting, multivariable equilibrium that changes depending on the specific problem being solved. Because human behavior is context-dependent, QAI adjusts the weights of its 5 dimensions based on the role. A behavior that makes a military commander qualified would likely make them a failure in a domestic setting. The context engine builds role-specific profiles, like the parenting subsystem. The mother subsystem weights ability toward biological signals and alignment toward nurturing. The father subsystem shifts consistency to boundary enforcement. Both converge on impact, measured entirely through the child's trajectory. If the structural consistency is too low, the child develops weakness. If the alignment toward nurturing is missing, it causes damage. Both outcomes degrade the parent's QAI score. Evaluating a role steeped in emotion requires an AI to ignore what people say they mean to do and strictly track the long-term biological and psychological outcomes they produce. Modern society often allows individuals to coast on past achievements. A degree earned decades ago still serves as a shield against current incompetence. A time decay function solves this latency. Without continuous recent success, past achievements lose their mathematical weight. The system also applies an error penalty. Repeated mistakes drop the score exponentially, but verified corrections trigger a learning bonus that pulls it back up. For a head of state, act on impulse or short-term political gain, and the score drops as negative ripple effects materialize. Real qualification at this level requires measurable, long-term policy outcomes rather than performative ego. When an individual demonstrates high alignment and adaptability over years, they activate the trust multiplier. Their future decisions and predictions are mathematically assigned higher credibility. The logic of time decay removes the utility of a static credential. It forces a state of continuous, active competence. Building a mathematical architecture on paper is one thing. Deploying it across a global population introduces friction. The first hurdle is the measurement problem. An AI faces significant challenges when trying to quantify abstract concepts like human meaning or deep ethical intent. The larger barrier is sociological. Objective systems that expose incompetence threaten existing power hierarchies. We attach our self-worth to our job titles. Subjecting those titles to a comprehensive, objective evaluation triggers a psychological crisis. The bottleneck for QAI resides in the human ego's resistance to surrendering the protection provided by social masking. Qualification exists as a dynamic relationship between action and reality. It is not a title you earn once and keep. Nature enforces this truth through survival. Society distorts it through status. QAI acts as a technological mirror designed to restore the alignment between what we do and the outcomes we produce. The survival of our global infrastructure relies on abandoning symbolic status in favor of a system that demands evolving, measurable consequences. True qualification isn't about proving you belong at the top of a hierarchy. It is about proving you have the capacity to adapt to the reality in front of you.
Welcome to the arena, where progress is forged in the fire of healthy debate.
Together, we dismantle the complex issues shaping our society.
Welcome to the debate. In nature, evaluation is absolute.
Right, entirely absolute.
Exactly. Like if a bird builds a weak nest or, places it in the wrong environment, the eggs fall. The lineage ends. There's no performance review, no subjective grading curve.
And definitely no credit given for trying hard.
Right. Nature's assessment of that bird's fitness is binary, immediate, and, profoundly unforgiving. But in human society, we use proxies.
Proxies like university degrees.
Degrees, job titles, accumulated wealth. We use these to signal our competence. And today we are examining source material that proposes a radical technological solution to the failures of these human proxies, which is a qualification AI or QAI.
Yeah, a massive theoretical architecture designed to continuously score human fitness across literally every domain of life.
Right. And I am arguing that QAI represents a necessary, truth-aligned ecosystem, one that corrects our societal illusions and maps human potential directly to reality.
And, I come at this from an entirely different way. While I fully accept the historical premise here, that our current symbols of qualification are deeply flawed, the idea of this omniscient scoring architecture is a dangerous overcorrection.
You see it as dangerous.
Oh, profoundly. I maintain that QAI is fundamentally constrained by what the text calls the measurement problem. That is the absolute impossibility of quantifying the unmeasurable qualitative nuances of human existence. Reducing human identity to an objective, continuous ranking isn't just technically flawed. It's a destructive concept that would trigger a catastrophic societal identity crisis.
Architecture is being proposed in the text at all. We really have to look at the core pattern of qualification it identifies.
The four continuous traits.
Yes, exactly. The text defines a qualified system as possessing 4 traits. First, ability, which is the raw, functional skills required for a task. Second, alignment, so the ethical intention and purpose directing those skills.
Right.
Third is consistency, meaning reliability over time. And fourth is adaptability, the capacity to respond and stabilize when the environment suddenly changes.
Which honestly makes perfect sense in a historical context. I mean, if we look at the hunter-gatherer era, the feedback loop for those 4 traits was immediate.
Highly immediate.
Right, if your ability to read footprints was low or your adaptability to a sudden winter storm was poor, you starved. The feedback was reality itself. Qualification was tied directly to survival.
Exactly. It was a pure match between demands and capacity. But as human civilization scaled through the agricultural, industrial, and now digital eras, those feedback loops grew exponentially longer and heavily obscured.
We introduced distortions.
We did. We developed credential inflation, where a piece of paper from 20 years ago is somehow treated as current competence. We introduced social masking and emotional bias, where, an individual's charisma or likability is conflated with their actual operational capability. We created this massive, dangerous gap between perceived qualification and real qualification.
And I agree that this gap is exactly where systemic failures occur. I mean, when a society's symbols of competence no longer match actual competence, bridges collapse.
Right.
Economies crash. Medical errors multiply. The text accurately diagnoses the disease here. Where we diverge completely is on the proposed cure.
The QAI framework.
Yes. The source material suggests bridging this gap mathematically. It proposes this equation where a QAI score is a function of ability, alignment, consistency, adaptability, and impact. It wants to feed human behavior into this equation in real time. But, and this is crucial, the text itself raises the data quality problem.
Meaning the inputs.
Exactly. Human behavior is inherently messy, subjective, incomplete. You are feeding an algorithm flawed, fragmented data and expecting a pristine, objective measurement of human worth to come out the other side.
Well, you are assuming the system relies on the same flawed data human managers use. But the QAI architecture proposed here relies on a contextual engine to capture what humans miss. It doesn't generate one single global score that defines your entire worth.
Right, it generates role-based scores.
Precisely. It acknowledges that qualification is highly context-specific. Let's look at how it calculates this using the text examples. Take a surgeon. Today, we judge a surgeon largely by where they went to medical school and their basic mortality rates.
The standard proxies.
Right. QAI evaluates them dynamically during surgery. It tracks diagnostic accuracy, yes, but it also measures their biometric stress response to measure ethical decision-making under pressure. It cross-references their micro-decisions against long-term patient recovery and mobility rates. And perhaps more importantly, QAI corrects what the text calls high-impact invisibility.
Elevating the unseen work.
Yes. Think about a hospital janitor. In our current capitalist hierarchy, society assigns a very low status to this role. The janitor has no prestigious title, but QAI measures their hygiene effectiveness and directly correlates it to the reduction of localized hospital-acquired infections.
Which is a life or death metric.
Exactly. Suddenly, the math reveals that the janitor's impact variable is keeping the entire ecosystem alive. QAI might score the janitor at a 94 in their role, while a mid-level hospital administrator pushing redundant paperwork scores a 62.
Okay.
The QAI sees the reality that our societal biases completely miss. Imagine a world where the janitor's QAI badge grants them higher operational respect in an infection ward than the hospital's CFO. That is truth-aligned qualification.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that comparison. Let me tell you why. Evaluating a surgeon's operational success rate or a janitor's sterilization metrics is fundamentally different from evaluating the depth of human relationships.
How so?
Those are mechanical processes. Hygiene is measurable math. But the moment this system crosses the threshold of your home, the math falls apart. Let's examine the parenting module proposed in the text. The idea that an AI can evaluate a parent's qualifications solely through the child's trajectory is, well, it's chilling.
The text is very specific about how it structures this, though. It breaks parenting down into functional dynamics, like a mother subsystem and a father subsystem.
Which is incredibly reductive. The text suggests measuring the mother subsystem for emotional attunement and the father subsystem for boundary enforcement. And how exactly does an algorithm score mother's love?
By tracking outcomes.
By tracking the child's subsequent emotional health and cognitive milestones. That completely ignores the profound, unmeasurable nuances of sacrifice and intention. I mean, a child might struggle with emotional health due to genetic predispositions, neurodivergence, peer trauma, variables entirely outside a parent's control.
This system accounts for...
What if a parent does everything right, mathematically, but the child still struggles? Distilling the tragic, beautiful, messy essence of parenting into a feedback loop of inputs and outputs strips away the very core of what it means to care for another human being. You cannot quantify devotion.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. Look, I see why you think measuring love is impossible, but let me give you a different perspective on what the system is actually measuring. Go back to our bird building the nest.
Okay.
Nature enforces qualification instantly. If the nest is poorly constructed, a predator takes the eggs. Nature does not care one single bit about the bird's devotion, its subjective intentions, or how much it loves its offspring. It only cares about the structural outcome.
Because it's a bird.
Yes, but the principle applies. When an unqualified human parent provides too much comfort, creating psychological fragility, or too much pressure, creating a nervous system running on perpetual anxiety, the child suffers the consequences, regardless of how much the parent loves them.
But we are not birds. We possess consciousness, we possess guilt, grace, and the capacity for unconditional love precisely when outcomes are poor.
But relying on unconditional love as an excuse for poor parenting outcomes is exactly the kind of social masking QAI is designed to cut through. QAI simply brings that natural outcome-based feedback loop into human society, but with ethical guardrails.
Guardrails defined by a machine.
Guardrails that prioritize the child's actual security and psychological development over the parent's subjective feelings of trying their best. If the outcome is failure, the qualification was insufficient. That sounds harsh, but reality is harsh. The system just makes that harshness visible early enough to correct it.
Okay, say it works perfectly. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that we accept QAI's attempt to measure these deeply personal roles. We must then confront the mechanics of how it calculates these numbers.
The mathematics?
Yes, because it isn't just a flat lifetime score. If we are replacing human judgment with this algorithm, the specific mathematical mechanisms are everything.
Well, the mechanisms outlined in the text are highly sophisticated, precisely to avoid rigid, unfair, lifelong judgments. Let's talk about the time decay function. This is the mechanism that prevents people from resting on past achievements.
Right, the depreciation aspect.
Think of it like muscle atrophy. If you are a lawyer who passed the bar exam 20 years ago, our current society calls you qualified. But if you haven't litigated a case or negotiated a contract in a decade, QAI doesn't care about your framed diploma. The algorithm actively depreciates your ability metric by a fraction of a percent for every week you lack measurable output.
So you are forced to constantly produce just to tread water?
You are forced to remain capable, but the system is also profoundly forgiving. It features an error penalty system designed around growth. If a professional makes a mistake, their score drops.
Naturally.
But if the system tracks that they subsequently completed targeted simulations to correct that specific blind spot, it doesn't just erase the penalty, it applies a learning bonus to their adaptability score. It mathematically incentivizes owning your mistakes and fixing them.
That sounds reasonable in a vacuum. But what about the trust multiplier? Because that is the mechanism that terrifies me.
The trust multiplier is essential for system efficiency. It operates somewhat like a financial credit score. Just like paying your credit card on time allows a bank to trust you with a larger mortgage, the trust multiplier means a track record of ethical, consistent decisions gives you more operational bandwidth.
It gives you an algorithmic advantage.
Yes, If you have a historically high consistency and alignment score, your future decisions are weighted more heavily in the system. You earn algorithmic credibility.
Doesn't a trust multiplier mathematically entrench existing hierarchies? I view it as hard-coding a new caste system. Think about the power resistance and data ownership constraints the text itself raises. Who controls the data controls reality.
But the data is decentralized?
Even so, if you grant a trust multiplier to people who are already succeeding under the algorithm's current parameters, you create a self-fulfilling feedback loop of privilege. The person with the multiplier gets the benefit of the doubt, so their score stays high, so they keep the multiplier.
That's a cynical view of it.
It's realistic. Furthermore, even with the multi-layered privacy the text suggests, separating your personal data layer from your professional data layer, people will absolutely attempt to game this system. And who is best at gaming systems? Those with the most resources.
Which is exactly why the text details anti-gaming mechanisms. You can't gain outcomes. The system uses cross-verification of vast disparate data sources. A CEO can't just fake a quarterly report if the QAI is simultaneously analyzing the real-time supply chain logistics, employee biometric stress levels, and customer utilization rates.
Assuming the sensors are perfect.
The sheer volume of interconnected data makes manipulation nearly impossible.
With that implies the algorithm's definition of success is perfectly objective. But the algorithm will inevitably amplify the biases of whoever designs the initial weights and measures. If a Silicon Valley engineer programs the adaptability metric, it will reflect a Silicon Valley definition of adaptability.
That implies a static human-coded algorithm. But the text explicitly details an evolutionary layer. QAI is not a fixed piece of software. It is a learning ecosystem. It tracks which traits actually lead to long-term survival and success, and it updates its own mathematical weights automatically.
Without human oversight?
It detects hidden realities that humans miss. The source material gives a brilliant example. The system might discover, through decades of vast data analysis across millions of data points, that baseline emotional stability is actually a far better predictor of successful national leadership than raw IQ or charismatic speech-making. QAI isn't hard-coding human biases, it's discovering empirical truth about what works and shifting societal value toward those traits.
But who decides what constitutes a successful outcome for that evolutionary layer to track? Is a successful nation one with the highest GDP?
Not necessarily.
The highest reported contentment? The lowest carbon footprint? The algorithm still requires an initial philosophical framing to know what direction to evolve toward.
Which is why the source material advocates for human-AI hybrid judging. The AI does not operate in a vacuum. The AI detects the vast, complex patterns across time, the things too large for a human mind to process. But human juries validate the edge cases. It is a partnership.
A partnership, right.
And the text suggests it would be integrated gradually, starting only with safety-critical roles like healthcare, aviation, and infrastructure, before expanding.
A partnership that eventually encompasses the entirety of human existence. And that brings us to the ultimate philosophical tension of this text. What happens to human society, to our collective psyche, when our worth is continuously, unblinkingly evaluated by an external ecosystem?
It depends on how you view evaluation.
Imagine your own smartphone vibrating right now in your pocket, dropping your QAI alignment score by a fraction of a point because you lost your temper in traffic, and that data was instantly cross-referenced against your public profile.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because you're viewing evaluation strictly as a punishment. QAI is not a penal system. It is what the text calls a living evaluation ecosystem. It's a mirror of reality.
A very judgmental mirror.
But helpful one. The text proposes a truly beautiful concept, a full life qualification path. From birth to age 10, the system isn't judging a child. It is analyzing data to help optimize neural development and emotional pattern formation.
Right.
In your 20s to 40s, it guides your rule specialization, matching your specific ability and adaptability metrics to the exact jobs where you will find the most flow and output maximization. And in late life, 60 plus, the algorithm shifts entirely.
To mentorship?
Yes, it moves to mentorship scoring and knowledge transfer. It doesn't throw you away when you age. It dynamically adjusts to what you are most qualified to contribute at every single stage of life. It guides humans toward deep fulfillment by aligning them with their actual proven capabilities.
That is a compelling argument, but have you considered the sheer psychological terror of that existence? You are describing a dystopia where humans are constantly monitored and graded from the moment their neurons form to the moment they take their last breath.
I wouldn't call it terror.
The text explicitly acknowledges a critical danger. People attach their core self-worth to their roles. If QIA objectively and continuously exposes our incompetence, our frailties, and our misalignments, it creates an unbearable identity crisis.
Only if we maintain the false ego structures we have today.
But those structures are human nature. The text's insistence on truth-aligned outcomes completely ignores a fundamental aspect of human sociology. Our happiness and our social cohesion often rely on illusions.
You mean lying to ourselves?
I mean, we need social masking to interact with people we disagree with. We need the grace of unearned forgiveness when we fail. A system that brutally, mathematically strips away the space between who we desperately wish we were and who we objectively are, well, it will destroy the very social fabric it claims to optimize.
But those illusions are exactly what cause systemic failure. The surgeon who relies on an illusion of competence, protected by a stagnant system, physically harms patients.
Yes, in a professional setting.
The political leader who relies on social masking and charisma, rather than long-term ethical alignment, destroys nations. The grace of unearned forgiveness is a beautiful interpersonal concept, but applied at a systemic level, it is just a shield for incompetence. QAI's ultimate goal isn't to rank people for the sake of a hierarchy. It's to continuously align humans with what actually works across time and consequence.
At the absolute cost of our human agency. If an algorithm tells me from age 10 what my optimal neural development path is and dynamically restricts my access to roles where its math predicts I might fail, I am no longer a human navigating the messy, beautiful struggle of life. I'm simply a data point being optimized for an ecosystem's definition of efficiency.
Well, let's summarize our positions in light of this discussion. I maintain that QAI, particularly when implemented thoughtfully with the evolutionary layer, human-AI hybrid judging, and gradual integration, represents the necessary evolution of human qualification.
Right.
It moves us away from the dangerous, outdated distortions of legacy credentials, inherited wealth, and manipulative social masking. It moves us toward a genuine, continuous alignment with reality. It is the only tool capable of finally mapping human potential to human responsibility.
And I maintain that while our current societal proxies of qualification are undeniably flawed and cause real harm, handing over the evaluation of our existence to a scoring architecture is a profoundly dangerous overcorrection.
Because of the measurement problem.
Exactly. It relies on the false premise that all of life can be measured. It ignores the qualitative dimensions of human life, meaning, intent, and love, while risking unprecedented manipulation, entrenched algorithmic hierarchies, and the total loss of human agency.
Despite our deep philosophical divide on the implementation and mechanics of QAI, I think we both acknowledge and agree on the fundamental premise established by the source material. True qualification is not a piece of paper.
No, it's not.
It is not a fixed state or a title you earn once in your 20s and hold forever. It is a dynamic, ongoing, rigorously tested relationship between an individual and reality across time.
I agree completely with that definition. The match between demands and capacity is constant, and the complexity of evaluating a human life, from the emotional attunement of a parent in a private living room to the ethical weight of a surgeon in an operating theater, is staggering.
Truly staggering.
The source material offers even deeper explorations into the specific mathematics of the evolutionary layer and the precise weights of these dimensions, for those who want to explore how such an architecture would actually be coded.
It is a profound concept to wrestle with. We will end our debate here today without declaring a victor, leaving it to you to form your own conclusion. Imagine your own life right now. Consider whether you would want your daily routines, your professional outputs, your hidden strengths, and your deepest flaws evaluated continuously by the unblinking eye of a qualification AI.
Would your score reflect who you really are?
Think back to the bird building its nest in the wild. Nature demands absolute qualification, and soon our own technology may demand the exact same of us. Thank you for listening.
The future is here. AI podcast at DigitView.
Don't blink. The evolution has only just begun.
This is DigitView.